So in the brand new lore book, we get a fairy tale, a story of Uther and his grand quest to prove himself as a paladin. He fights in a tournament and wins through compassion, and this story is filled with characters that are obviously hinting at Arthas' storyline. Then, ultimately, Uther was told that his memory will be wiped out and that he will once again remember this tale in the future. Now, obviously, this was a prophecy of his relationship with Arthas and what would happen later, so let's take a closer look at this story. Brought to you by Gamivo. Use my link to get Shadowlands and Game Time cheaper as well as any other game. Use code DORON for an additional discount. The story itself is presented in the folks and the fairy tales of Azeroth, which is half canon currently, but this one is obviously story development for Shadowlands and Uther's character, and it really does seem like this will be all quite relevant even as early as 9.1. The entire tale is written in this medieval tone with exaggerations and mythical characters, knights and kings, and all that stuff. So as the first Paladin Order was formed and Uther was among the pioneers, the bishop sent all of them across various places in the world to prove their resolve. As Uther ventured on his way, he was suddenly caught in this giant storm near a lake and he completely lost his original tracking. Uther somehow managed to leave the lake, but surprisingly, he runs into a beautiful maiden bathing who invites him to her palace. Her name is Miatras, which I'm going to spoil for you immediately. This is an anagram for I am Arthas, so Miatras, I am Arthas. However, despite welcoming, the girl is sad at his arrival as she was sure that he was just a knight participating in the upcoming tournament where all knights perish every single year in much the same manner. Of course, Uther plays the role and plays it cool, and obviously, he wasn't lost. He is there for the tournament as he saw that this was a way to prove his resolve, as was the original mission. He told her not to worry, he won't kill any knights in order to comfort Miatras, but she tells him no, the knights don't fight each other here. Instead, they all face off against a giant beast that always wins, and they never really stand a chance, so every year just a bunch of knights dies and they never really do anything. Well, Uther decided to just disregard the warning and enrolled anyway, but just before, he met the father of Miatras, King Gilvin Artenes, which is an anagram for living Tyrannus, which would obviously be the father of Arthas and the king of Lordaeron. Here, he also meets a bard who sings of a king that was there before Gilvin, a person named Aslin Artenes, which had been slain through treachery. This Aslin Artenes, the betrayed king, is obviously slain Tyrannus, as the name indicates. Fast forward, the tournament starts, every single knight dies as they face off against a gigantic frost dragon, as was obviously expected, and Uther realizes that he has no chance fighting him. However, he remembers Miatras warning him that if he raises his sword, he will ensure his doom, so he decides to use another weapon, compassion. He sees that the dragon was obviously shackled, forced to participate and do this, so as he was in fear, he showed empathy, and the dragon surrenders and Uther ultimately wins. Now, he's supposed to receive the prize from Miatras, but as he approaches her, he notices that her wrists are bruised, which obviously indicates that she was the shackled dragon, transformed, and now she's back into her original shape. Then, she begs him to not take the prize, which is some type of a jewel, as this was a gift from her fated, which was the bard that I previously mentioned. Uther doesn't claim the prize, but he wants to know what the hell is going on here, and Miatras tells him that this tournament is her punishment as she had disobeyed her father and broke his line. Uther wants to get her to leave, but she says she can't as she's bound to the place, and just before Uther leaves, she tells him that he'll forget all of this stuff, but one day everything will return and suddenly it will all make sense. And pretty much exactly that happens. Uther returns to the chapel with not even a memory, but the bishop points out a crack of ice magic in his breastplate, indicating that he did accomplish something, even though at the time he had no idea what he even did himself. Ultimately though, the memory of this would come again when he faced off against a beast once again, which is Arthas, and once again his armor was cracked, this time by Frostmourne. So that is the full story, and it is pretty obvious. The princess would be Prince Arthas, and just as the princess broke her father's line and obviously participating in defeating slain Theranos through treachery, that is exactly what Arthas did as he ended the Manatil bloodline and Lordaeron, of course if we don't count his sister. Now, most people would be wondering, really, Uther had this prophecy of what would happen and he conveniently forgot about it. Excellent fighting, and ultimately this is explained through his memory being wiped out, and I'm guessing he wouldn't even know it was a prophecy. He was only told that eventually that his memory would come back, so he didn't really know something was going to happen in the future. I think the takeaway point here was that Arthas could only be defeated through compassion as he was too large of a beast to tackle by sheer force, although I ultimately believe this relates to compassion when he threw Arthas into the maw and the entire situation within the Shadowlands. Obviously, you would want to end the beast killing all these knights, but turns out Meatheras was just forced to do all this as she was bound to the place and she didn't really do this willingly. This was her punishment. Pretty much the same situation was Arthas. This was his punishment for being prideful. Sure, he was a terrible Lich King that murdered thousands upon thousands, but ultimately he was bound to the jailer who kept him in that position, and the only way to save his soul was to show compassion and empathy, as force would not really work in this manner. Overall, a pretty interesting story, but so far it does seem like this might be an indication that Arthas might appear at some point in the Shadowlands, and Uther might be just playing a significant role here, Uther and his compassion. Thank you for watching. Check out this ending going to remain a Death Knight by clicking on the screen, and also check out Arts Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.